I love video game showcases. They never get old. The anticipation of what new software is coming to our respective platforms, the days and rumors and speculation ahead of the stream is forever endlessly fun, even if everything we hope to see doesn't actually come true. You bet your ass for good measure, I'm prepping my Bloodborne next-gen port summoning circle. I know it won't happen, but still gonna do it though. But if I can be real, I'm not sure if the major showcases have been necessarily hitting as of late. At least, not in a little while. Like, remember that E3 where Sony ushered their audience from themed room to accompany first-party trailers? Remember the orchestra that preluded the freaking God of War 2018 reveal? And it's not even just the pageantry of having a live audience and a degree of showmanship. Or that it was E3 even. That made these showcases so strong. It's that the quality of the showcases reflected the healthy lineup of first-party games Sony was then outputting. As we've all transitioned into on-demand, direct-style videos, that aura feels absent. And strong first-party titles are getting fewer and farther between. That's not to say that pre-recorded showcases can't be good. Last year's Xbox showcase gave us so much promise. Multiple Persona titles on Game Pass, a new trailer for Metaphor ReFantasio, looks at both Avowed and the new Fable, South of Midnight, a new flight sim, Hellblade 2, and of course, who could forget that 40-minute Starfield Direct? And even though Starfield and Hellblade ended up either mixed or disappointing, it was the first time since the pandemic that felt like we were finally turning the corner on what next gen was going to be. Quality first-party experiences, regardless of platform. The confidence and promise of these consoles was at an all-time high. But have they ever truly delivered on these promises? I'm not so sure. Summer Game Fest, or excuse me, Hot Geoff Summer, is right around the corner. And now more than ever is truly going to be the test to gauge where the games industry is currently at. Will the SGF showcase be enough to reinvigorate fervor and excitement for what's to come to consoles? Can SGF solve the so-called drought currently on next-gen hardware? Or will these shows continue to feel lackluster, uninspired, and ultimately full of hollow promises? Well, before we find out, we're gonna need a little bit of context. Actually, it's a lot of context. So, let's set the stage. Welcome to the Save Room Showcase. Cue the lights. We're going back a few years. Wait, hold on. Stop the show. Pause. Can we pause?
Hey, Christian, you went way too far back.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you've got the wrong boot up, dude.
Yeah, I was trying to do one of those bits like they do in real showcases, you know?
Okay, well, I just thought I'd let you know.
Thanks. It's a good bit though, right, Peter? Peter? Alright. Guess I'll just hit the title card then. This was the beginning of Sony's showcase in June of 2020, aka the summer where next-gen consoles were finally unveiled. PlayStation, with the utmost confidence, called their event the Future of Gaming Show. I don't know about you, but there was such an intense fervor around this time where it felt like, finally, new hardware was about to push the boundaries of what console gaming could be. Forget the gimmicks of haptic feedback and adaptive triggers, even though I like that shit. How is utilizing the SSD on both PlayStation and Xbox going to fundamentally change the way games are designed? I couldn't wait to find out. Like, truly, the balls for Jim Ryan to say this at the top of the PlayStation showcase.
Sound and feel. Enough from me. We're gonna have the games do our talking.
I'd soon end up disappointed. Look, I'll say it again at the top. We are not getting the most out of our next-gen consoles. We're nearly 4 years into this generation's life cycle, and I've yet to have a formative experience that felt like it fulfilled the promise of what these pieces of hardware can really do. Yes, loading is faster and graphics look prettier, but as far as leveraging unique experiences I can only play on PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, what has there really been? On the PlayStation side, yes, you can make the argument for Helldivers 2, which is also available on PC, and probably Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. But so far, the last truly resonant experience that used both the hardware and controller in innovative ways was Returnal back in early 2021. Before that, Astrobot's Playroom, the small experience that came free with the console at launch. No joke, I think both of these games so far are the PlayStation 5's most important games. But that's a topic for a different video. Also, Team Asobi. Wouldn't they be fucking perfect for an Ape Escape reboot? Like, come on, dude. Come on. As far as Xbox is concerned, they've straight up just struggled this generation.
We have heard your feedback on two fronts.
With almost all of their tentpole exclusives launching to either mixed or negative reviews. Halo Infinite, Redfall, Hellblade 2, and Starfield. Actually, titles like Forza and Flight Simulator can and should count, but for the purposes of this video, we're talking exclusively more mass appeal first-party titles, and less niche, but you get it. In fact, the only game Xbox published that actually garnered mass praise was Hi-Fi Rush. But they turned around and shuttered the studio. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself, and we'll dive into that a bit later in the next section. My point is that in terms of quality first-party experiences, both these consoles have failed to convince audiences that they need the newest and most expensive versions of their respective box. Even Sony's tentpole IP games for PS5, both God of War and Horizon, had their latest entries also released on last-gen PS4. We'll give these the benefit of the doubt though, as it takes time for people to transition to the new hardware. But we're nearing the corner where studios have to leave last gen behind if developers want to fully utilize the power of the new consoles. Or are we? In a recent earnings call, Sony Interactive Entertainment shed light on some numbers for PlayStation 5. The results are, I think, a bit concerning. Currently, PS5 has sold over 59 million units. That number, in and of itself, is actually great. It means that the PS5 is on pace to match the sales of the PS4, which is currently the 5th best-selling console of all time. And yet, these numbers were qualified by Sony's total monthly active users. Of the 118 million PlayStation players, over half were not on PlayStation 5. Approximately 60 million users are still on PS4. And if you can believe it, as of the end of 2023, 2 million users were still on PS3. Yeah, the PS triple. It's no wonder this year's Call of Duty is going to be on last-gen consoles. That's where most of the money is gonna come from. And I get it. It's not easy to get people to adopt an expensive new box. We're in a post-pandemic world, and in North America, currently entering a looming recession with escalating inflation across all sectors except wages. Things cost more, but we, the workers, aren't making more money. As a business, how do you then get people to buy your product? Well, the simplest incentive here is games. And by games, I of course mean formative experience you can't get anywhere else except the new box. And this is where things get a bit more dire. Hiroki Totoki, chairman of SIE, spoke of Sony's current business practice on that earnings call. And it makes all the major announcements of the last few years from PlayStation start to make a bit more sense. There's been a shift at Sony. No longer are they necessarily seeking sales numbers for each of their games, but instead, playtime. They want people playing the same games across longer periods of time. Actually, the exact word they used was invested, implying not just time, but money, identity, and association. This is how Sony wants to establish their next tentpole franchises. Helldivers gets a record high of 600,000 plus active users, and Arrowhead is rewarded with a place on the masthead. Congratulations, you've made it. But at what cost, though? With Jim Ryan now gone,
Bye-bye, dude.
Herman Holst and Hideaki Nishino are set to be named the new CEOs of SIE. And with this announcement came talking points from the new talking heads. As part of a new 3-year plan, Sony is committing to better first-party games and richer experiences for PS5 users. And this should be exciting to hear, right? Well, I'm not sure it's the silver lining we're hoping it would be. The plan of increasing playtime for each title is still a priority. This is evident from the recent State of Play, where 1/3 of the 30-minute runtime went to the live service game Concord. And if the general feedback of the game since its debut has been any indication as to how PlayStation users are feeling about the future of gaming, then I'm not sure things are looking so hot. And in case you need any more convincing about where PlayStation games are headed, take a look at this slideshow Herman Holst presented in a recent Q&A. Barring Nixes and Valkyrie Entertainment, as they provide assistance in porting console games to PC and aiding studios in the development of games, respectively, this leaves 8 studios working on single-player narrative-focused games to 9 live service evolving genre games. Whatever that means. And that sucks. Skewing the balance of eclectic story-driven games in favor of chasing live service titles is just such a bummer. We can't all be fully invested in 9 separate multiplayer games all the time. Again, hence the day and date with PC. But that's just not what I look forward to playing on PlayStation. And I know I'm not alone. Why else would Astrobot get such a huge pop at the State of Play? And yeah, of course, the game looks incredible, but it sucks that the onus is going to be on us to buy the game in an attempt to show Sony we want more of these smaller narrative experience and not the generic, uninspired, derivative clones of other, more popular hero shooters. Insane that the actual Overwatch clone was included later in the same State of Play with Marvel Rivals, but I digress. Again, as far as these next-gen consoles are concerned, it's just nothing but continuous frustration. And that puts us at Xbox. Just like Sony, so too has Microsoft had their share of frustrations with their line of next-gen consoles. Chief among these is sales figures. To put it bluntly, Xbox is straight up struggling to get these things sold. In a recent Twitter thread, video game analyst Daniel Ahmad compared the number of units sold from PlayStation versus Xbox. Last quarter, Sony was able to sell 4.5 million units. On the surface, this looks like actually a healthy number. But it gets complicated when you think about profitability. In short, for Sony, it really isn't. They can't keep first-party development costs down, and it's actually Nintendo that is twice as profitable. But this is all ancillary. According to Ahmad's estimates, however, Sony was outselling Microsoft 5-1. That means Xbox sold just 900,000 units last quarter. This is decidedly not good. Atop struggles with first-party title output, the decision to divide Xbox's new hardware into 2 separate SKUs, each with varying hardware limitations, puts developers in a tricky spot. With Phil Spencer promising feature parity across their devices, developers have to figure out how to make features of their next-gen games work on both the Series X and the less powerful Series S. Recently, Larian Studios cited trouble with the Series S as the team struggled to get local co-op running on the weaker console. The promise of feature parity delayed the release of Baldur's Gate 3 on Xbox consoles by a significant margin, with the team eventually abandoning the feature on Series S in order to ship the game on the Xbox platform. Just not a great look. Having to develop games for 2 different SKUs on the same platform isn't easy. It takes time and resources to get everything to work properly. But it isn't even just 2 SKUs Xbox has to worry about. Their Play Anywhere initiative means that a PC audience also needs to be satiated. PC now means a third version of a game for a singular platform. Sort of. Because you also have to differentiate between the Steam version of the game and the Windows version on the Xbox app. This positions developers in an expensive, time-consuming maelstrom. You're having to develop more versions of the same game for a platform with the smallest audiences, de-incentivizing many developers and publishers to even pursue the platform to begin with. And you know who that sucks for the most? Us. Because it means less games for Xbox users to play, less diversity in the catalog. And if your first-party output is struggling, and less third-party games are coming to the platform, then why should we buy the box? And what is there left to play?
Please welcome to the stage, the creator of the Game Awards, Geoff Keighley.
Last year, Summer Game Fest returned to Los Angeles live with a fan audience. By all accounts, I think it was a pretty good show, with plenty of reveals from third-party developers like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Mortal Kombat 1, and freaking Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But we also got some major updates to AAA games, albeit a lot fewer, such as with Alan Wake 2 and Spider-Man 2. But it was at the top of the show that I think resonated with me the most. After a heartwarming introduction, Geoff goes on to give the mission statement of Summer Game Fest, saying,
"The landscape of video game events has certainly changed over the past few years, but one thing hasn't. There are a lot of great games in development, and our singular goal today is to get you excited about the future."
A touching statement that ultimately embodied the entirety of the showcase. A diverse lineup of trailers with games for everyone's interest. Things are a little bit different this year, and the industry hasn't gotten healthier. I don't need to remind you about all the layoffs and studio closures. Ahead of this year's SGF, however, Geoff has already talked down the show, asking everyone to temper their expectations for big reveals via a live stream Q&A. That the Game Awards in December is typically more reserved for those big caliber reveals. Which is kind of odd if you think about it. Like, isn't this the E3 replacement? Actually, more specifically, he calls it a light year for the industry. Which, again, just points back to the fact that games are costing way too much money and are taking too long to make, leaving us with fewer, safer titles for major developers. At the time of writing, confirmed games not to show up at SGF, according to Geoff, are Metal Gear Solid Delta, Kingdom Hearts 4, and Judas. and that games that will receive highlights are titles such as Monster Hunter Wilds, Kingdom Come 2 Deliverance, and Metaphor ReFantasio. Which, fine, I'm actually looking forward to 2 of these games. But is this going to stop fans from ballooning expectations? Of course not. All of us are craving something meaty, fun, and exciting. And no amount of temperament is going to curb that. When that countdown starts and the pre-show livestream music starts hitting, all bets are off.
And for those of us lucky enough to be in the room, well, it's easy to get swept up in all the excitement. Right, Peter?
Oh, yeah.
More than anything, however, I think the prerequisite of mitigated hype is representative of the angst we've been feeling for nearly 4 years now that, sadly, a plethora of amazing third-party games just can't satiate. When people talk about the video game drought, this is what they mean. That even if there are plenty of quality, independent, and third-party titles, the first-party lineup is still lacking. No matter what next-gen console you've purchased, be it Xbox or PlayStation, each of us invested with the promise that we'd be getting formative first-party games on these things from the marquee studios we know and love. Think about this message Sean Layden, the previous CEO of SIE, gave about VibRibbon ahead of Sony's showcase.
A little earlier, I was delighted to hear Andy give a shout out to one of the most iconic games of our time, VibRibbon. Yeah, give it up for VibRibbon. A personal favorite of mine that really embodies the PlayStation spirit. It wasn't a multi-million seller, but that's not the point. VibRibbon was unafraid to go against the tide. It was courageous in its ambition, and it brought a completely new experience to gamers.
This was now 9 years ago, and it is decidedly not how Sony operates anymore. So far, we haven't seen many of these bigger, unique games this cycle. And if the E3 replacement isn't the time or place to show off what these studios have been hard at work developing, then when is? But since I know this video is scheduled to go up after the Summer Game Fest showcase, I figured it would be best to leave a bit of space here to reflect on what I thought about the show. Take it away, future Christian.
Thanks. As expected, third-party and independent developers showed up in a really big way, with particular interest in the indie horror scene. I was genuinely surprised at Geoff mentioning layoffs, and I found the overall pace of the show to be pretty good, too. However, again, in terms of first-party, we're still kind of left up in the air as to what'll fully utilize the hardware. Luckily, Astro and LEGO Horizon are enough to keep us fed from the Sony side. For now.
I like Geoff. It takes a lot of work to ideate, plan, and execute not just one, but 3 separate shows year after year. Summer Game Fest is usually the best of that bunch, with loads of titles that interest a lot of us. But we also have to remember it's a heavily commercialized event with, more than occasionally, the lack of variety. We're going to get Fortnite ads. We're going to get Call of Duty commercials. We're going to get like an 80% ratio of action games to literally anything else that's not a dude with a gun or a sword. SGF is primarily the place for marketing to the biggest audiences and playing it safe with games publishers know will sell to the masses. And, in my opinion, isn't the place where we'll find the answers to our question of satiating our console appetite. So, again, we turn to Xbox. Recently, Microsoft made tsunami-sized waves with the announcement they'd be shuttering 3 studios and folding 1 into an existing studio as part of cost-cutting measures. Gotta earn back those $73 billion somehow. The latter of this announcement was Roundhouse Studios, which was essentially dissolved of all its talent. A select few on the day of Microsoft's announcement would receive an email confirming their transition into helping ZeniMax Online support the Elder Scrolls Online. Just awful. The former were Alpha Dog Games, recently the developers of Mighty Doom. Arcane Austin, developers of Redfall and the critically acclaimed 2017 Prey. And Tango Gameworks, the Japanese studio darling that delivered one of the most refreshing titles in gaming last year with Hi-Fi Rush. In an email to staff, Matt Booty, president of Xbox Game Studios, wrote that these cuts were made in an effort to reprioritize the output of games from Xbox's first-party studios, writing, "These changes are grounded in prioritizing high-impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds which you have nurtured over many decades." 24 hours later, news broke that both Arcane Austin and Hi-Fi Rush were pitching sequels to their respective critically acclaimed games. Arcane Austin were set to return to their single-player immersive sim roots, most likely with another Dishonored title, while Tango focused on developing a sequel to Hi-Fi Rush. And yet, still, despite the supposed reprioritization of Xbox to develop high-impact titles, these studios were closed in order to make room for the next Elder Scrolls and Fallout. But like, how far out are these games? It's been years since we've seen the announcement of Elder Scrolls 6, and the next Fallout isn't even in pre-production yet. Hell, Perfect Dark can't even make it out the door. Even if Dishonored 3 doesn't sell the amount of copies, or I guess gain the amount of Game Pass subscribers that Xbox needs, at the very least, they'd have diversity in their games library and considerably less time than it would take for the next two Bethesda titles to release. And poor Hi-Fi, who was never even given the chance to become a franchise. It's gonna be rough for Phil Spencer at this year's Xbox showcase. Forget the games for a minute. As CEO of Microsoft Gaming, you're gonna have to say a few words to garner back trust in the brand. Not just for gamers, but for developers. You have to announce that Xbox is still a place where creativity and variety is instrumental to the mission at Xbox. You have to publicly own the actions of Microsoft before doubling down and proving that the future of Xbox is still bright with an array of quality first-party titles that aren't just sequels or IP. Actually, why not hear what Future Me has to say on this again? Christian, did Phil respond to any of this?
No, not really. I mean, I guess at like IGN Live, but
Of all the big showcases at this year's SGF, Xbox is the one best positioned to surprise with what next gen can deliver. Both Avowed and Indiana Jones are set for this year, and showing off solid gameplay trailers for both, I think, will fill a lot of people up with hope that, despite the needless turmoil, Xbox can still turn around and have a good year.
Wait a sec. Good year? Ah, it was a terrible year, man.
Silksong, previously shown off at an Xbox showcase in 2022, can make a return.
nope, still waiting.
The Coalition is set to reveal a new Gears game. There's still Fable, State of Decay 3, and Contraband. And let's not forget that with all of Microsoft's acquisitions, Activision announcements are now poised to show up here too. Cue the Call of Duty trailer yet again. My worry is that, just like Sony's State of Play this year, Xbox's focus on IP may lead to a lack of variety with the titles they show off at their showcase. So, while there may be plenty of games some of us look forward to, the lack of variety as an industry overall will leave many of us feeling like there actually isn't a whole lot on offer. Which is a really weird place to be, but one that I think is still relatively valid. And with mid-generation console upgrades rumored to be on the horizon, it may be up to Xbox to prove that the promise of new generation games are worth the pricey point of entry. But I'm willing to bet that won't really be the case, as many unique titles still need more time to develop.
Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you soon.
So, will Summer Game Fest 2024 save the next-gen console drought? I guess? Maybe? If the bar is set solely at those unique third-party and independent titles, then yeah, absolutely. But if it's varied first-party games, I fear we'll still have to wait some time before we can drink from the promise of that sweet, delicious next-gen nectar. Why would I describe it that way? And who am I kidding? Elden Ring DLC and Nintendo will save us before June is over. I'm sure of it. A new Mario and that PlayStation Astrobot game? Yeah, that'll save us. Let me know what you thought of this year's Summer Game Fest. Are we finally free of our next-gen console drought? And what game excited you the most? But also, God, please tell me Silk Song or Death Stranding 2 showed up somewhere. Until next time, my name is Christian, this is Save Room, and we'll see you in the next one.